back to another episode of the Photographer Mindset Podcast. I am your co-host, Seth Macy. Usually my better half, Aaron, is here, but we're going to do a different format for the first episode of the year. I can feel my heart beating. Maybe I'm just so used to having Aaron in my pocket in case I blunder my words or say something silly, which happens from time to time. I'm just kidding. Today's format is going to be to start off the new year. I thought it would be very interesting for each of us to do an episode. Obviously, I'm going first, where we share our year in review with the goal of it being decently vulnerable, honest, sharing things that went really well and from our own opinion, and things that maybe didn't go so well, looking into why, and tying a lot of it to photography and our creative pursuits and just who we are as people. So I'm going first. Aaron will be next week. I'm sure they will be very different in tone and obviously in context and content. But so I got this idea. As many of you maybe know, I'm an avid listener of the Chris Williamson podcast, and he has an awesome set of questions if you're subscribed to his mailing list that he gives out. I don't know if this is the first year, but anyways, gave out this year, end of 2025, a year in review questionnaire. So questions like as ambiguous as how has this year gone? What went well? What went badly? Why? What lessons did I learn from those things that went badly? What habits or systems have accounted for most of your success? Other things like, and you see me looking down because I've written all this out on a note in my Apple Notes. So if you see me looking down, I haven't rehearsed it, so I have to read some of this if you're watching on YouTube. Who are the people who had the greatest impact on me? How can I collaborate with them more? What did I expect to complete but didn't? What else we got? Favorite new emotion for the year? Favorite quote? Favorite musical artist? So there's some fun ones like that. What would I do this year if I wanted to make 85-year-old me miserable? Very interesting. I had to sit and think about a lot of these. So going to tie it again to me just as a person in general, and also back to photography, videography, and our creative pursuits. So I think I'll just read through the questions, or read out the question rather, and then I will tell you what my answer was. And you maybe get to know me more as a person, disagree with me, relate, but perhaps it's some things, I'm thinking of some things that you're thinking of when you look back on your 2025 and forward into your 2026. So my heart's no longer pounding. That's an interesting sensation. I'm sitting here wondering, why is that the case? Because I'm alone, but I got my coffee. I'm ready to go. So let's scroll up here in my notes and start with the very first question. How has this year, 2025, gone? This year's gone well. I started a new trend, which I've mentioned on the podcast. This is my first year of doing it, which I see lasting a very long time. And that is choosing 3 very difficult things to accomplish for the year. Things that are so difficult that even if you give it your all and try your absolute best, there is a 50% degree of failure. And the reason I like this concept is because it ensures that you are aiming high. You're not setting the bar low for yourself. So this year for me, in case you've forgotten, I wanted to learn a language. I wanted to become a B1 learner in Norwegian, and that language particularly because I want to go there someday and be able to speak the language while traveling, despite Norwegians having incredible English. And years ago, I had started on Duolingo, which I no longer use because I don't think it's as effective as other learning material. But I had started and never finished. And a big theme for this year was finishing open loops, closing open loops. So I said, you want to learn a language? You may as well pick up where you left off a few years ago. So that was my one thing. My second thing was to win my local 10K race. And my last one was to become entirely debt-free because I had some outlying debt that I wanted to get rid of. Nothing too crazy, but just good practice to not owe anybody anything. So interestingly, my year end, I like to call it my non-fiscal year, ends March 31st. So I still have a few months to complete these things. I mean, nothing bad happens if I don't, but I like the idea of my year end being March 31st as opposed to January 1 because I don't like making the new year a big monumental day, like a big deal out of it. I used to do that when I was younger. Got to do something for New Year's Eve. Got to do, it's got to be a big deal. I don't do that anymore. So my year end is March 31st. So I still progressing really well in my Norwegian learning. I didn't win my local 10K race, but I trained really hard. I can honestly say I did my best and I improved from last year. Last year I finished 7th overall and this year I finished 4th overall. So it's not, it's a failure in the sense of I didn't accomplish what I had set out to do, but I drastically improved nevertheless. And my last one, become debt free. I am so close. We'll talk more about that as we get in. So the next question on this is what went well with the year? So personally, this year I felt like I really came into my own with video work. Obviously started as a photographer. The last couple of years, I guess 2 years, have tried to really get, I wouldn't say shy away from photography. Like I'm not going to say no to a photography gig, or I'm not going to take, it's not like I'm not going to take photos, but I really wanted to consider myself a videographer. I felt like I really came into my own this year with video work. Still feel very much like a rookie, uncomfortable in the space, still so much to learn. I mean, I guess that's anything, but I made some work that I was incredibly proud of this year. Excuse me. And more so, not only was I proud of it, but the work I was creating really gave me a sense of meaning, as in what I was creating was part of something much bigger, which I hadn't felt in a very long time. Obviously, what comes to mind, I've mentioned on the show, is my video work that I did for a summer camp, a boys' overnight summer camp. And it really didn't feel like work, despite being paid for it, which I'm trying to chase that feeling more. The videos I feel like contributed to something that I feel strongly about that backs up my values, which in this sense is getting kids into nature and away from their tablets, TVs, video games, devices. So I felt like my level of creativity could contribute to promoting that value set in the world, which felt really nice. What also went well in terms of the video space, I made a big new client who was wonderful to work with. Pretty big gig, and they were inbound, which was nice after so many years of pursuing outbound, which has worked, but it's nice now at this stage to just have something get served to you in your email inbox, and you just need to be coherent enough to bring it home. So that was nice. What else went well? I said I would talk about this. I knocked off so much of my personal debt this year. I'm making it sound like I have a huge problem. But again, I've come to feel that really no debt is good. I mean, unless you're talking about a mortgage or whatever. I don't know. I had during the pandemic, I had owed some back taxes. That's entirely gone. Paid off my entire student loan, which was gone. Paid off my entire line of credit and credit card that I have, which is gone. And oh my God, it felt so overwhelming at the time. And now looking back, it was doable, obviously, because I've done it. I feel like I became very much more financially literate this year. For my people who love Dave Ramsey, I fell down that network, down into that rabbit hole, and it made a simple concept. Just because something is easy or simple in theory doesn't mean that it's easy to execute. This made it more easy to execute, was just immersing myself in kind of that arena. And starting to learn to only, don't spend money if it's not in your debit account. And don't fund your life with credit. That's kind of what I've taken away from this year. Again, nothing crazy, but just I could see how that could get out of hand. And I feel like my other financial goals are much more attainable now, which is really nice. What else went well this year? I felt like I really bonded with my nephew in particular this year, who is 5 years old. Up until this year, we weren't like super close. He wasn't really interested in me, but now he's really grown to, I feel like, love me. And actually, the other day we were just sitting around the holidays, and he looks at me, he goes, "I love you, Uncle Seth." And I was like, "Oh my God, my heart." And that's just that's a unique feeling for me. Obviously, I don't have a child of my own, but that was just, I can't really describe it. um, and I like the fact that I'm able to have a real positive impact on his life and his development as an uncle. And he loves being outside. He loves going on scavenger hunts, asks for them for when I'm around for me to make them for him. Um, Wrestling, he loves to roughhouse with me. Um, and it's just cool to see a kid really come into his. I think I told a story about him a few weeks ago where we were talking about how we can use our breath to regulate our emotions, and watching him fall off a chair. Instead of going into crying, just watch him do almost like resonance box breathing and just get himself back up and avoid a complete meltdown was pretty cool. So yeah, really bonded with him. And that was one of the highlights of my year. I think also what went well this year is I was really good at focusing on closing open loops, which has given me more peace of mind and has freed up space cognitively for me to focus my energy on other things, and I avoided not starting new projects until I finished ones that were already on the go. This is obviously still a work in progress because the new shiny thing is always the most attractive. But if you keep going that direction, you end up having 40 things that you haven't finished. And then they constantly enter your mind sporadically throughout the days, weeks, months. And it can be difficult to, I think that just takes up cognitive bandwidth. So yeah, I actually wrote out a lot of my open loops this year and started knocking them off. And it freed up a lot of space for, I guess, more creativity or, pick whatever. And lastly, our TPM Alaska trip went amazing. It was another big success. Everybody who came on it was awesome. Aaron was great. Big part in organizing it. Well, he organized most of it. So really grateful for that. All right. What went badly this year? What went badly, in my opinion? I got multiple injuries from running this year, which was upsetting, but I understand that can be part of the journey and a chance to learn. And don't worry, I'll go over these in terms of what lessons I learned from these things that went badly, but let me just lay them all out first. This didn't necessarily go badly, but I want to make even more income this year. And just get even closer to financial goals. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, I was not struggling, but I really had to think about what went badly, which, is a good sign. Obviously, I'm not a perfect human and things can always be better. One thing that went really badly, not devastatingly bad, but could have gone without was, so I manage my own TFSA, which the American equivalent would be a Roth IRA. And one of my stock picks this year was really bad. Not going to mention it, the name of it, just because there's no need for that. But in hindsight, it was a bad investment. I was overly aggressive. It's an unrealized loss, but still not fun to look at. Not devastating. Have other investments, etc. Eggs in other baskets. But still, you look at one, I'm sure this has happened to many people. You look at it and you go, oh man, it didn't work out. So I'll get into why I think so. But okay, so what lessons did I learn from these? So with the running injuries, I didn't train smartly. I didn't space out for full runs with enough rest days. For example, I would run consecutively the day after a long run, which was really stupid. I thought I felt fine and that my body didn't need recovery. I should have given myself an extra day. I've had a lot of injuries over the course of my running career that I've just kind of ignored because I've been able to run. So for example, my knee hurts And I was like, oh, I'm able to run, but so we don't really need to deal with physiotherapy or fixing those things. So, I guess you could see that I knew, I thought that I was overly confident that I knew what my body could handle, and I need to get better at listening to my body. So now I'm starting it from scratch. I'm avoiding running entirely, which has been very difficult because I love it so much, while I rehab and strength train my knee issues, my foot issues, so that I don't end up as in older age with just lifetime ailments that make it difficult to move. I also didn't ramp up my mileage gradually. I was arrogant. I thought that I was in good enough shape to just hop back into a 10K training program after years of running and fast track my progress. It didn't work out. I got humbled. Um, in terms of, I think I said I want to make more income. I mean, we all do, but I could have done more outreach and getting new clients. Why didn't I? Um, I'm not sure. Maybe photo and video doesn't excite me as much as it did in the honeymoon phase. I mean, I still love doing it, but maybe I'm just like not enamored by it. And perhaps that creates a hesitancy to do outreach. And maybe the lesson here is it's time to build another source of income in a different area that I'm passionate about. I have a stack of proof that I can do this. And yeah. And oh, my bad investment that I wasn't happy with. I think it stems to the similar lesson with the running. Overconfident, big aggressive bet. Perhaps overconfidence can be a weakness of mine as well as a strength. Something to look at. Again, not a huge deal, but something you want back, or not back, but you learn from. All right. What habits or systems accounted for most of my success this year? I've mentioned it on the show, the 3-2-1 system that is from Greg McKeown, the author of the book Essentialism. Do I have it here? Yep, holding it up in front of me. The light is blowing out the whites on it. Sorry. So yeah, the 3-2-1 method is every day. Picking 3 maintenance tasks. So for me, it could be hopping on the bike, which maintains my aerobic fitness. Meditation, or cleaning up the desktop on my computer because sometimes it gets overrun with files and it needs to be tidied up. Those are maintenance tasks. So picking 3 of those, picking 2 urgent and important tasks. So they have to fill both those boxes. They're both urgent and important. So for example, recording a podcast, it's urgent because it needs to come out on a Monday, and it's important because y'all are important. And then the 1 in the 3-2-1 is a project for the day that you work on for 2 or 3 hours, which, could be a podcast. It could be a video project. But that system has definitely helped or has accounted for a lot of my successes this year. It's helped me feel better and more productive in 2 ways. First, it made me much more able to focus on the current things in my life that were most important, and helped me eliminate a lot of the stuff that just simply wasn't. I've also tried to align these 3-2-1 daily tasks with my macro goals that I mentioned earlier. So it was the language learning, becoming debt free, and winning my 10K race. So I would think about, when structuring those daily 3-2-1 lists, do those daily operations contribute to the grander macro goals? So for example, working out, as we're doing a strength training your legs for the day as a maintenance task, that gets me closer to winning a 10K race because it makes my legs stronger. Just as an example, the method also helped me set more realistic goals for the day. So when I knocked off all of those on my list, I was able to consider it a productive and progressive day, and I could feel good about that. Whereas in the past, no matter how much I did, it was never enough. My to-do list for the day was overambitious. Again, this theme of overconfidence coming up. This is something I'm, really working on and looking at. My to-do list was overambitious, and not nailing it each day 100% would make me feel crappy, like a failure. And those days add up if you do that too many times. Another habit that contributed to my success this year was priming my day. And what I mean by that is starting your day in a way in which you want it to continue throughout. So, for example, starting my day with a morning meditation for 15 to 20 minutes, thinking about nothing, invited a day of calm, focus, and inner peace. And I found on those days things bothered me less. Minor inconveniences that used to really irk me just rolled off me like water. Starting my day with a workout made it more likely for me to follow my diet or have vigor and energy throughout the day. So this is something I've really been thinking about, is how do I want to prime my day? And you can honestly, it starts the night before as well. I mentioned this on the show. I got a little front alfalfa going in my forehead there. Let's get that out of the way. Okay. Gonna bother me. Another habit, which I mentioned on the show, was app blockers. So again, never have been super addicted to social media or time wasting apps, but found myself compulsively checking them. So putting restrictions on those apps, limiting how many times I could open them during the day or for how long, was very helpful. I actually removed apps entirely. Like I removed Instagram, just see you later. I made my phone screen boring as hell. Like it's all grayscale, so there's no color on it. My wallpaper is just a pure black screen. I know I'm sounding like I'm no fun, but it helped me cut a lot of bullshit out of my life. And I realized quickly that I don't miss a lot of these things on my phone. So that was a great habit. Another good habit was limiting my simultaneous stimuli. So if I was reading a book, I don't have the TV on in the background. I'm not texting a friend at the same time. If I'm editing a video, all my other apps, Apple Mail, Google Chrome, they're closed. I only have Final Cut open. If I'm watching a YouTube video, I have the video on full screen. I'm not jumping down to the comments right away. I'm not looking at the related videos, the shiny bells and whistles, trying to really instill a better attention span this year, and recalibrate my dopamine baseline by cutting out anything that was distracting me from what was the primary target goal in the moment. If I'm texting my friend, as easy as it is to be doing that while watching a TV show, I'm not doing that. Like I'm just texting my friend for that 15-minute session. Very helpful. So all this very helpful in trying to rebuild a better attention span. Another good habit, doing one thing every day that I did as a kid. This really helped me reconnect with my youth, makes me feel younger, makes me think in a youthful way, which can be helpful, especially creatively. I've found more joy and fun in things that aren't deemed productive by the adult and modern world, which I think is great. This is something that I've personally needed, was to just find joy in things that don't necessarily propel you forward in a tangible, measurable way. And I've been able to travel back in time and think as I did as a kid, which was honestly being more focused on what was happening directly in front of me. I think that's most kids. Last habit. So when I've had a problem to solve, a dilemma, whether it's how to respond to a certain email, or even this past holiday season was figuring out, what do I get as a gift for certain significant people in my life? That's a hard thing to do. It's hard. Some people are hard to buy for. Not that I don't buy crazy. I'm not into the materialistic sense, but I like to get one or two things for somebody. So when I have something I need to solve or figure out, what I used to do and what I feel like many people do is they sit there and they try to think the problem to death. So I'm very much somebody who likes counterculture. So rather than sit there and try and think things to death this year, I've started dedicating 25 to 30 minutes of complete stillness, sitting there in complete silence and stillness and letting an issue kind of percolate and get worked out in my brain. So I'll start this deliberate session by priming my brain with the problem and then just letting my mind go dark in a meditative state and purposefully avoid thinking about the problem. And around the 20 to 25-minute mark, the solution pops into your brain just like magic. I need somebody to explain the science to me, but I would give this a success rate of 90%. I've done it for things that could be deemed significant problems, minor problems, and something always comes to you. It's like your brain knows, it figures it out, even in that short of time, but it requires the stillness and it requires the non-distraction and the ability to let go and avoid thinking it to death. Okay, next question on the year in the review list. What are the most valuable ways that I spend my time, and how can I find more time for this? So honestly, without a doubt, this was easy. One of the most valuable ways I spent my time this year was teaching my niece and nephew, when I was around them, about nature, which I feel like I know a decent amount about, and watching them develop into amazing people. It just made me feel so fulfilled. So my niece, watching her, with the help of Haley and myself, gain the confidence to paddleboard on her own, take it out and feel confident. Or watching my niece or my nephew find a love for picking up a dumbbell if I was lifting weights, when we were visiting. Just filled my heart with so much joy. I like the ability that some of my values can have an influence, and not in the way that like they have to have the same values as me. It's just interesting to see kids pick up on what the grown-ups around them are doing at their own accord, because there's some things that they're just not interested in at all. Both of them have said things to me at times when I'm around visiting for the holidays or whatever. Uncle Seth, can we go outside and look at nature? I don't want to be on my tablet. And do you know how amazing it is to hear that? That's just so incredible. And I think I can find, the second part of the question is, how can I find more time for this? Is just being there when you can. I think it's as simple as that. I don't really struggle with this, and I feel like I got a pretty good grasp on this, but it's, good to think in terms of maintenance. Yeah. The other thing, another way I'm spending, a valuable way I'm spending my time is, this isn't too exciting, but reading. I've learned so much from books. The book of the year for me was probably, as I reached for it, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, Stoic philosopher. I know some people roll their eyes when they hear about Stoicism. It's not about detaching emotionally. It's about being honest with how you feel and then living a life that aligns with your virtues. So in terms of reading, I can find more time for this. I mean, I already do this. But perhaps ditching, as I think creatively, I thought, YouTube is another big learning vessel, which I use, which I love. But sometimes a book is just different. You're reading in your voice, in your head. You're not being spoken to. Perhaps switching or dedicating more time to reading books rather than YouTube could be a way to spend more time doing this. I don't really know. I'm just trying to think creatively on the spot. Another one of the other most valuable ways I've spent my time was obviously exercising. We all know, hear it every day from people screaming at us, probably me included. It's incredibly valuable. I don't sacrifice, I think, anything for aerobic and strength training, because I just feel so much better when I'm doing it. All right, next question. Coffee sip first, because it's going to go cold otherwise. I feel like I've just been going. I thought that when I read this or wrote this out, I was like, oh man, I'm going to be done in 20 minutes. We're halfway through probably. This is a good one though. And yes, the coffee is now lukewarm, so I have to battle with that. We'll put that down as tough part of our 2026. What brought me the most happiness? How can I help these activities to happen more often? So I think I already mentioned this related to, for me, what brought me the most happiness was, helping teach my niece and nephew um, about nature, our natural abilities. For example, the breathwork story I told you, how fun it can be to just be outside. Perhaps a way to have these activities happen more often. Maybe in the future, there's a business there that a small business that involves teaching more kids about this kind of stuff, the value of the outdoors, breathwork for children. I've thought about this business idea a lot, and it excites me. And again, I'm confident that I can do something like that because I routinely visit my stack of proof that shows I've been able to do difficult things before. And again, that's a sidebar. I encourage everyone, if you haven't already, to write a undeniable stack of proof that shows you are who you are and that you're capable. You've broken through barriers, you've created things from nothing, and that when you read that list, it makes it easier to do that moving into the future. Bonus thing that brought me tons of happiness this year was that my dog learned to swim. He's 4 years old. He would always go in the water. Grizzly. Maybe you guys have seen pictures of him. He's a shepherd husky. He's 4 now. But for the last 4 years, he's always liked the water. But he had touch. His paws had to touch the ground. And Haley and I, since he was a puppy, we've always taken him out on paddle boards. On our paddle boards and with his little doggy life jacket. And he loves going for the cruise, but he would never swim. We've always wanted him to swim, to paddle, to not have his paws touching the ground. And this year, with a lot of encouragement and a lot of coaxing, he finally got the courage to jump off the paddle boards and swim to shore, or to swim between our two paddle boards back and forth. His life jacket has a little handle on the top so you can scoop him up like a briefcase. And it was so awesome watching him. It took 4 years for him to grow his confidence and to get the courage to finally have that moment where he just sent it off the board. And now you can't keep him out of the water. He's just so proud of himself doing his little doggy paddle in his little orange doggy life jacket. And you can just see how proud he is of himself. And I've thought about this, and perhaps, he's taught me something that, hey, buddy, the scary jump's worth it, even if it takes 4 years to get there. Ambiguous, I know, but do with that what you will. Another thing that brought me the most happiness, planting and tending to flowers and vegetables in Haley and Line's garden. I love knowing that the bees and monarchs can visit, and that people I care about, friends and family, can eat the produce that we grow from home. You're seeing a theme here. This all involves being outside and with nature. So, this is why these kinds of things are useful, because you can look, these kinds of reviews I feel like are useful because you can look for themes. And lastly, things that brought me the most happiness was creating art projects outside of photo and videos. So I found a raccoon skull this year, mentioned on the podcast, the story, created an art project out of that where I mounted it on a piece of driftwood. I had so much fun. It was a process that I was able to just get lost in, where the time just disappears. Another art project made these really cool frames for a bathroom that I'm going to mount sticks into. It's hard to explain, but it's backed with birch bark. It's really cool, and it's entirely unique. And again, the time just disappears, and it's fun. So yeah, creating art projects that are outside the photography, videography realm brought me a lot of happiness. All right, moving on. Who are the people who had the greatest impact on me? How can I see and collaborate with them more? This is kind of interesting. Firstly, recently I met a person at an event I was photographing, and he was a municipal councilman for his city. And he was telling me how he's built and sold businesses over the course of his life. And this is funny that this person's had the greatest impact on me. This conversation was maybe 10 minutes max. But for whatever reason, my brain remembered it. And just out of curiosity, I asked him, I said, when's the right time to sell a business, move on? And he said, just clear as day, when it's no longer fun. Almost like a duh. Why are you asking me this, you young buck? And I said, well, then how do you know when you've just moved on? How do you know when you've just moved from the exciting building phase to the maintaining phase, but inside you still love it? You know, like, how do you tell the difference between outgrowing a venture or just being more in of a maintenance phase? Because like, if you grow at the, is it possible to be as excited on year 20 as you were in the first few months of building a venture? I don't know. This is something for me to think about. It was an interesting conversation. It's obviously something that's stuck in my head. Other person that had a greatest impact on me this year was a dead person. That's why I laughed when I first read this question. I already picked up the book Meditations, but Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor, Stoic philosopher, had a great impact on me this year. He's dead. It's cool how you can have dead role models though, and that's, books are timeless. And you can collaborate with someone like this forever. You can pick up the book anytime you want. You can frequently read ideas like that. Again, I think I mentioned earlier the Dave Ramsey, and one of the people who works for him, George Camel, had a big impact on me. George's YouTube channel helped give me weekly guidance on how to become even better at managing money on a day-to-day. And Dave actually sprung this concept on me, which has definitely changed my life. So for people who follow Dave Ramsey, obviously it has a religious tinge to it, the channel, and Dave. And he suggests donating 10% of your income right off the top to your local church, which is considered teething. Now, I'm not a Christian. I don't really know what I am. Maybe agnostic. So rather than donating 10% of my income off the top to my local church, I have been doing this I've been donating 10% off the top to a local wildlife refuge, something, an area that I care deeply about, and where I can donate to specific initiatives within that wildlife refuge. So for example, donated to helping restore the bat network in Ontario, because bats are like mega endangered, not good. Or a turtle project, helping turtles better cross busy roadways, fixing their shells when they get hit by motor vehicles, etc. And what's interesting here is you can always make an excuse to give less than or nothing at all, less than 10% or nothing at all away to charity. You could say, oh, I need to pay off my debt first, or oh, I need to max out my 401k or my Roth IRA or my TFSA, or I'll donate when my mortgage is paid off. And there's just always something that you could make an excuse where I need to look after me before I look after somebody else. And this is kind of telling me there's never an ideal time to be generous with your money. And giving can be something that will bring you joy no matter where you are financially. Obviously, this is not financial advice, but just my own kind of experience. And funny enough, when I started giving 10% of my money away, even though like I could have used it for other things personally, when I started doing this, more opportunities started coming my way. More income generating opportunities started coming my way. Coincidence or inviting generous energy that contributed to these opportunities is up for debate. People listening are going to say coincidence. Others are going to say that's a gift from the universe. We're all different people with different beliefs. Do with that what you will. But it's just an interesting correlation. So, and to tie it back into Marcus Aurelius, one of the things you gather from reading a lot of Stoic philosophy is that, especially around giving and generosity, is that this is a reward of that is the giving and the generosity. It's the fact that you gave to a cause that you care about. That is the reward, not the recognition. I love this. This is why when people donate anonymously, I'm like, person probably has their life together. Probably has a good head on their shoulders. So what did I expect to complete, but didn't? This is very interesting. This question isn't necessarily what I didn't complete, because I put a huge emphasis on taking things to the finish line this year. But this more so has to do with what's taken me way longer than I anticipated. I've kind of reframed the question. And this is, we fall victim to this as photographers, videographers, often when we're too idealistic about a time frame. So the videos that I was creating for the summer camp that I mentioned earlier, that has brought me so much joy and fulfillment this year, they took way longer than I thought. And the reason for this, however, is a good one. They didn't give me a deadline as in we need this by October 31st. It was like, we just need it sometime this winter down the road. And so I've taken my time, but that's okay, because I've made the videos the absolute best that I possibly can with my current skill level as a videographer and editor. And I've come to realize that there is so many ways to make a video better. I don't necessarily struggle with deciding when a video is done, because I feel like I do have a sense of when a video is complete, but I don't want to leave meat on the bone, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that a maximum effort showed to my clients that I truly care deeply about the project and the brand. I think, however, when I was doing, time estimates, I'm thinking from a business brain of how long this should be based on what I charged. And then when I'm actually in the editing phase, I'm fully in the artist mind. So this can cause kind of an abrasion or a dissonance when the voice in your head is saying, you need to be finished. This is business brain. You need to be finished because you only charged X amount of dollars. And for every hour you work more on this, you're hurting your bottom line. And then the artistic voice comes in and says, hey, buddy, just quiet down for a minute. This video can be better. This guy here is capable of making this even more awesome than it already is, even if it'll take another 20 hours. And at this stage of life, I'm okay with the trade-off favoring the artistic mind, even though it can feel difficult at times, or at least on this project. Because I have confidence that the speed at which I can hopefully create awesomeness will hopefully increase over time with repetitions and doing this more. Last thing I expected to complete, but I didn't, was I've had this idea of licensing my images to a calendar company, and making money from a licensing deal, especially since I have 4 years of case studies that I'm able to sell calendars for a price point way higher than they probably would sell in a bookstore or grocery store or wherever people sell calendars. Last year I did the Bears calendars are themed. Calendar companies make themed calendars. I did the Bears last year, Wolves the year before that. They sold very well for zero marketing. And I wanted to take those case studies and go to a bigger calendar company and say, hey, here's the proof that these will sell for way more than what you're going to sell them for. Let me license these to you, and in exchange for a fee. I thought that would be a nice way to have my photos out on a grander scheme and to make a good chunk of change. Didn't do that. And the reason for that, and what I've come to know about myself, is I need to create a written, structured plan. If I create a written, structured plan that I look at every day, I am like 98% likely to hit that goal. If I let the ideas percolate and float around in my head willy-nilly, just in the ether, in the goo of my mind, I won't do it. I need to write down major goals for me to take it serious instead of just the sporadic and routine visits of that goal or idea into my head. I know myself that when I do this, I write it down concretely and classify it, the likelihood of accomplishing it is much higher. I've done this with running. I got this idea from running programs. Like when you follow a printed out running program, you see what's on schedule for the day, you check it off. I did this with paying off some of the debts I wanted to do. It was on a checklist. Easy peasy. So I need to do this with things that are important because that's why I didn't follow through on this. All right. What are the least valuable ways I am spending my time? How can I prevent myself, excuse me, how can I prevent myself from continuing to spend time in this way? Don't come after me. You already know what I'm going to say. And again, I preface this is my experience. This is my personal experience. You can think I'm an idiot or relate. It doesn't matter to me. One of the least valuable ways I was spending my time, social media. We'll get more into this later on. Also, and more interestingly, YouTube videos that are purely entertainment. Also, interestingly enough, YouTube videos that are educational, but that end up creating a false sense of accomplishment or productivity. And what I mean by this is you can watch 10 videos in a row on how to be, let's say, a better editor, photo or video editor. Burn 3 to 4 hours and then think that that's time well spent. Sure, it's time well spent. It's better than doom scrolling. It's better than smoking 20 packs of cigarettes during that time. It's time well spent in the sense that you're educating. But perhaps a better use of the time is watching 1 or 2 videos, applying a concept from those videos in the real world, actually doing something to further yourself towards the goal in the real world and towards something that's more fruitful rather than thinking, I watched 4 hours of videos today, productive. Because you could do that in theory every day and never actually work on anything, right? So just something to consider. Perhaps that extra 30 minutes of sleep, if you're doing this educational YouTube gauntlet run at night, is better than watching 4 extra videos. Maybe that trade-off makes more sense. I started to feel this way with, sorry, my camera was going all wobbly woobly. Sorry. I was starting to feel this way with podcasts like Huberman Lab, or even where I got this year in review, the Chris Williamson podcast, which are very science-driven, motivational, self-help, whatever you want to call it, even though I don't like self-help, it should be called self-improvement. And while I love these kinds of podcasts and you learn a lot, you get to a point where you start to understand the main messages. And you actually need to start hearing less of those messages because you become so rigid, so focused on optimizing everything. And you get this like false sense of I'm smart, right? I'm increasing my intelligence. I've stepped away from those kinds of podcasts this year because I've consumed so much of them that I get what needs to be done to a degree. I'm oversaturating my mind with these concepts. Perhaps you're doing that with this show, which is fine. And that I decided that, spending time on other things may be more worthwhile. And these shows, like I said, were creating a version of myself that was too rigid, overdriven to a point where enjoying anything that was non-productive was difficult, which is a way of life I don't want to get trapped into or too deeply into. So, yeah. How have my goals or priorities shifted over the last few months? Is there anything I am still doing that is no longer in alignment? So, not necessarily goals or priorities that have shifted, but one of the big things I've tried to shift away from is hyper focusing on the money that will be earned in gigs. I found that hyperfixating on the monetary gain from projects can take away some of the fun um, from the project, as well as make you take on work that you really don't want to. And then the quality suffers if you're not into it. I understand this is a livelihood for some of us and myself, but I've had more fun when I've turned my focus solely onto how can I make this video or this photo set I'm working on the best it can possibly be, and how can I make it serve a purpose that uh, is bigger than me. Um, let's just focus on making it amazing, and we'll get paid. This is difficult to verbalize because if you sign a contract for, I don't know, $12,000 a video gig, like it's really easy to just be like, that's a lot, like sweet, which like fair, but I think that should be like definitely more of an afterthought. Um, I found I'm creating better work when I constantly remind myself what I'm creating and why. Um, the quality ends up being better. All right, let's switch into some fun things. Just some easy ones. Favorite new emotion? Inner peace. If you can qualify that as an emotion. Favorite new emotion for the year was finding inner peace. So the guy that cuts me off in traffic anymore doesn't bother me. The small problems, whatever. And it's not apathy. It's like we've talked about, finding a way to regulate and creating that space between stimulus and response. Had a much more peaceful day-to-day experience. Favorite musical artist? King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, my friends. People who know King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard are like, yeah, dude, welcome to the Matrix. And people who don't are like, you sound insane. I actually, Heterodragonic Apocalypse. I'm holding up an album cover I just got for the holidays. One of their thrash metal albums. Petrodragonic Apocalypse. All right. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Favorite musical artist of the year. Favorite song? Not by King Gizzard and the Lizard. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I get dyslexia sometimes. Favorite song of the year was De Hjelpe Mai, which is a Norwegian song. I'll leave it at that. Means it didn't help me. De Hjelpe Mai. Favorite quote of the year. This one is so important. This has been tattooed on my brain for the year, and it relates to inner peace as well. And that is, remember that it is a shame to be surprised if the fig tree produces figs. And for the physician and the helmsman, it is a shame to be surprised if a man has a fever or if the wind is unfavorable. That's Marcus Aurelius again. It is a shame to be surprised if the fig tree produces figs, as the start of the quote is so incredible. When somebody who is a narcissist does something manipulative and rude to you, why are you surprised? If somebody, this really pertains to, for me at least, people doing unfavorable things to you and then you acting surprised. It's like, well, you know that person, you know what they're about. Why are you surprised? And when you know these things, you can maybe do things to protect yourself. You can remove yourself. You can come to know what to expect. It doesn't mean being a doormat in a sense, but it's why are you surprised when things are the way they were likely going to be? And, the second part of the quote, it's a shame for the physician and the helmsman to be surprised if a man has a fever or the wind is unfavorable. These are just parts of life. Why are you surprised by these things? Very stoic, obviously, but I love those. All right, now we're into the last meat and potatoes of the episode. We're almost an hour in, if not. I'm sure we're almost done, but these are interesting. So the question is, what would I do this year if I wanted to make 85-year-old me down the road miserable? I really thought about these. Well, obviously, you would hope. So I would neglect those closest to me and choose grinding or working or productivity over spending time with them. I mean, this is going to be a lot of the stuff you hear as cliches, but I'm going to honestly, those kinds of cliches and sayings have had no effect. This is just my honest fast forward into the future. I would neglect those closest to me and choose the grind over spending time with them. I would sacrifice experience for material gains, such as, got to have the bigger house or the better car. If I wanted to make myself miserable, I would forgo traveling to Europe or whatever for those things uh, in order to look like I had it made or whatever. No judgment if this is something you're struggling with as a listener, where like those things are important to you. I'm not here to cast judgment or to suggest my value set is better than yours, but I know that this would make me miserable. I would also avoid telling people how I felt about them. I don't like labeling, but for sake of ease here, the good and the bad, I think it's important people know how you feel about them. In a negative sense, it doesn't mean saying like, oh, I think you're an asshole, but maybe like telling people how something they did had an impact on you, because I think it's important to me that people know who I am and that they'll always get an authentic answer from me. I would, if I want to make myself miserable as an 85-year-old, I would spend so much of my time up until then worrying about the unjust, bad, or unfair that has happened to me. And I would, in the past, and I would fret about the future. I would do both of these things so much that I would forget to live with what I have and what all of us really only have, which is right now. Again, I know it sounds cliche, but think about it. It's true. What a tragedy would it be? What a tragedy it would be to spend your entire or a huge chunk of your existence worrying about what's to come and what's happened to you. It's a waste of time. I would totally neglect my health. I would eat poorly. I would stay sedentary. I'd drink. I'd smoke. I would avoid working out or focusing on mobility, so that when I was 85, there would be without a doubt an inability for me to move to any decent extent. I understand we slow down, things wear down, but I want to have the best level of mobility and functionality that I possibly can as an 85-year-old. What would 85-year-old me wish I did more of? I guess this question assumes that I didn't do enough of it, which with the previous question, we're trying to avoid. So for the sake of the question, the things I list will assume I'm already doing or trying to do them. So what would 85-year-old me wish I did more of? Spend time in nature more. Like, for example, I do this right now, but I want to continue doing this. If I didn't do that, I would wish that I did. This one's a good one. Pet the dog. Always pet the dog. I've actually said this a lot this year. Like when I've been feeling like kind of off or there's been a problem and I look over and Grizzly is having a nap, I go, I pet the dog. Whatever. I pet the dog. It's in the literal sense great, but it's also metaphorical. When in doubt, pet the dog. What would 85-year-old me wish I did more of? Built more things and expressed myself artistically in as many ways as possible beyond photography. And what I mean by this, in as many ways as possible, is this can be done in everyday life. For example, designing a room in your house to your absolute liking. I think this is actually a Jordan Peterson. I'm not a big Jordan Peterson guy, everyone. And even if I was, who cares? If you are, you're not, whatever. But there's a concept in one of his books that I like, just at face value, which is making a room in your house as good as it possibly can be. I like that. That was a tangent. Or curating the garden. Like these are all expressions of self. 85-year-old me would also want to make sure I checked in with the people I care about, and not just in the, hey, how are you, man sense. I would want to understand, I would want to over time connect with them on a deep enough level that I understand their human experience to the best that I could. Why? I'll think more about this when I get off the show, but it came to my head and I wrote it down. What are the things I do that make my day go great? I'm burping because I'm talking so fast. Usually I get pauses from Aaron. Okay. What are the things I do that make my day go great? Journaling. I have 5 years worth of journals that I've written in every single day. And I'm not bragging. I'm telling you this because by doing so, I'm reminded every single day for the past 5 years of why my circumstances are so favorable in comparison to a lot of people in the world. In other words, I'm reminded daily of how good my life is. This is gratitude. And people know I write that going back to priming our day. I write in my journal twice a day. I don't really write down my thoughts and feelings and all these things. I write 4 things I'm grateful for at the start of the day. That primes my day. It's part of my priming mechanism. I got clean water. I have healthy food. I have access to information. I have money in the bank. I have someone who loves me beside me in bed. My bed is so comfortable, it allows me to sleep 8 hours in total darkness. I'm not in a war-torn country. Shall I continue? I could go on forever and we would never get the podcast done. And then I write in it at the end of the day, things that went well for the day. And sometimes these are incredible things, like landed a huge new client. And other times it's my hockey team won. And this is important because it's taught me that you can find wins and joy in even some of the most insignificant things. Like my favorite hockey team winning a game, I know Canadian stereotype, has no bearing on my life, but it has no bearing on any level of productivity, but it's something I enjoy and it can classify as a little win. What else do we have? Things that make my day go great. A great night's sleep sets me up like nothing else. Again, you've heard this before, 8 hours in darkness. Getting outside at some point in the day, particularly in the morning, when I wake up, or in the evening, preferably both. Getting dressed right away is something that makes my day go great, especially for us who work a lot of the time from home. It can be easy to, I don't know, be a slob. I do this even on weekends. Get into your day clothes. Don't lounge around in your boxers or briefs. I get that like we need to cut back and relax. And if there's something you really need in your life, sure. But I don't like making a habit out of it. When I'm still in what I've slept in for the night, I feel lazy. I don't feel ready. I feel like I'm just kind of floating around. And my pet peeve, I swear I'm not judging. My pet peeve, pajamas in public. Don't do it. Don't do it. What else? Honestly, this is a good one that makes my day go great. Is smiling even when it needs to be forced. I've found that simply forcing myself to smile, even if I'm in a neutral or negative state of mind, shifts my emotions automatically to a more positive and energetic one. And this ties into the thought of you can't change your mood, but you can change the behavior. And then often the behavior changes the mood. You can't think your way into a better mood, but you can force a behavior that may produce a better mood or emotion. Smile. Force yourself to smile. Makes your day go better, especially when you're mad or pissed off. Next time someone cuts you off in traffic, grin ear to ear. It'll roll off you like water. What are some things that make my day go terribly? Phone use first thing in the morning. Terrible. You're priming your day for distractions, comparison, validation, all those things. You're just going to blast yourself with rings and dings and super stimuli. Not it. What else makes my day go terribly? Having 1,000 tabs or apps open while I'm trying to do something. Like I said, if I'm writing an email, mail is open. If I'm Hell, let's even use a social media example. If I'm writing a DM, that's all I'm doing. Another thing that makes my day go terribly, saying I'll do it tomorrow, because we know when those words roll off our tongue or off our mental tongue in our brain, we almost know we're not going to do it tomorrow. So don't say it. What else makes my day go terribly? Caffeine is the very first thing in the morning. Guilty of this from time to time. I'll have caffeine first thing in the morning if I plan to work out in the morning. Within the first 60 to 90 minutes of waking, I will have a coffee. If I'm not, I will forego my coffee for 90 minutes to 2 hours, get outside, get some sunlight in my eyes, wake up naturally, let the cortisol clear the adenosine in my body naturally without just blocking it with caffeine. Human lab, thank you for that. It helps a lot. I feel like I'm not dependent on a substance just to be able to start my day. It brings agency as well, which brings confidence. I'm also less likely to crash late in the afternoon if I do this. What else makes my day go terribly? Creating more open loops when you already have open loops on the go. So again, the more open loops you have, the more it's like running 40 different programs on your computer. Your computer still works, but it's slow. Close your loops. What else makes my day go terribly? Not having an achievable list of things you want to accomplish written down in front of you for the day. You can't live. I mean, maybe you can, or you think you can. I can't. I should say I can't. I can't live with a list that circulates in the ether in my head, because remembering it takes up, again, this is a big theme of the show today, takes up too much cognitive power. I need as much, for my computer people, RAM or GPU or whatever. I need as much of that as possible in order to have the best possible output for the day. All right. Last two. What is productive that what do I think is productive that isn't? Checking my stocks daily. I should switch to doing this weekly because staring at it is not going to change the price of them. This is important, especially as a long-term holder. I actually have a restriction on my Apple Stocks app. I can only check it twice a day, market open and market close. I was finding myself on the toilet because it's just funny, you delete other apps like Instagram, or you put restrictions on things and you start going to like the weather app and checking it. So the problem ends up being with the phone. That's why I've made my phone even more boring. But yeah, checking stocks daily, not productive. You staring at things is not going to move the price of things. This doesn't really relate to me anymore, but I'll share it anyways because I used to do it. I said we would come back to social media. Here it is. A lot of people disagree with us on this, but what do I think is productive that isn't? For me, posting to socials. We get a lot of flack, I know. And perhaps I can speak for Aaron here as well. He's coming next week, just a reminder. But based on who we or I am as a person, this is one of the lowest return on investment activities that I have ever participated in, is posting on social media. In exchange for marketing your photos and entertainment, I guess social connection as well, you are inviting, whether you know this or not, distraction, building an inability to focus like you could without the bells and whistles of endless scrolling. You're inviting comparison. You are inviting external validation as a sense of security. You're trading all this for marketing, connection, and entertainment. For me, this is a terrible trade. This is a net negative trade for me. For me, I can fill my artistic and financial buckets without being on that app. The app that comes with all these, let's call them side effects. I'm not here to tell you to delete Instagram or whatever. I'm telling you my experience and that the return is net negative. Here's an example, the way that I at least think about it. If I can get the desired results, let me rephrase. If I can get a set of desired results without taking a pharmaceutical drug that promises the same results, why would I take the drug at all? Unless, of course, it had an addictive quality to it. So what I mean by this is, again, my artistic and financial bucket is full with photography and videography outside of the app. So why do I need it if that's what's important to me? I would need it if I needed to get that hit. That's just me. You want to continue gramming? Go for it. I don't care. What is productive that I haven't realized? Okay. This is the last one for the day. Actually, sorry, I lied. Second last. What is productive that I don't realize? Sitting in nothingness. Allowing yourself to sit in complete stillness is absolutely productive. It teaches us to feel our bodies, the sensations, to be honest with ourselves, free from distractions. It forces you to just be with yourself, which is absolutely, for whatever reason, terrifying in this day and age, which I don't think has is very good long-term prognosis for us as a society. We need to be able to just be. Boredom is super productive because it allows the pressure to build for us to have creative outbursts. When you refuse to allow yourself to be bored and you constantly numb the sensation with socials, checking your phone, whatever, it prevents us from building up that pressure that will create motion forwards towards action, and in our instance, creative output. Lastly, and then I'm done for the day, what do I want to do less of with my time? I want to worry, stress, and fret less, which I feel like I've got a good handle on, but work in progress. Something that used to bring me huge existential dread that I mentioned on the show, but has now brought me an immense amount of peace and liberation, is the idea that nothing really matters. I'm sorry if this causes you anxiety, but I've come to embrace my insignificance in the grand scheme of the cosmos. And I have allowed part of my ego to die with that concept. And now I feel less worried by the natural laws of nature, of things that are beyond my control. And I'm no longer magnifying seemingly big problems that really aren't. So nothing really matters for me was a terrifying thought that has somehow on its own turned into something that is so peaceful because it allows those minor insignificances. Like you could even argue major insignificances or problems really don't matter. They can still be painful and need to be experienced, but for whatever reason, they're so small. What do I want to do less of with my time? I want to spend even less time on my phone. I already spend not a lot on it, but even less would be great. I want to text people less and instead phone them for longer, have deeper conversations at a less frequent rate. So rather than texting someone every other day for 30 minutes, I'd rather call them every 2 weeks and chat for 45 minutes deeply, hear their voice, hear their intonations, etc. Really get to know them or know what they're experiencing. That's my year in review. I hope you found it vulnerable, real, helpful, useful. I hope you found things you related with. I hope you found things that you disagreed with that challenged your way of thinking. And I hope it allows you to be real with yourself too. Because I think doing this kind of exercise, it took me about 2 hours. And there's more questions. I didn't go through all of them because we'd be 2 hours, but Aaron's coming next week, like I said, but I think this is going to set you up for a really, really good 2026. So with that, I leave you. Thank you for listening. Thanks as always for being a listener of the show. If you're new here, welcome. And until next time, see ya.